If your Nikon Z8 feels overwhelming right now, don't worry. I'm going to show you exactly how I set mine up for bird photography. Plus, a quick trick near the end that will help you capture birds in flight even when you're not ready for them. Let's jump in. We're going to start in the photo shooting menu, and we're going to go down to primary slot selection. And for the primary slot selection, I do a CF Express type B card because the Z8 has two slots. It has a CF Express and then the SD. I like to put all my photos on the CF Express card because photos are number one for me, and I'll go more into detail why I do this in a little bit. And then if we go down to secondary slot function, so this will be my SD card, I just have it set for overflow. I'm using a 512 gigabyte CF Express type B card. If I'm overflowing that, it's a good day. Next, we're going to scroll down to image quality. For image quality, I do RAW. So I shoot mainly RAW. I know there's some folks like to do RAW plus JPEG or just JPEG and things like that. I like just strictly RAW. RAW is what I shoot. I like clean editing. I don't even want JPEGs. I just want RAWs. I want full control. So nothing wrong with doing RAW plus JPEG to have the JPEGs back up just in case. If you prefer that, nothing wrong with it, but I just like shooting RAW. Next, we're going to go to RAW recording. So for RAW recording, we have three options. The number one being lossless compression. Lossless compression is going to have the most amount of data in your photos. High efficiency star has a bit less, and high efficiency has a bit less. Think of it like three tiers for RAW. One has the most amount of data, lossless compression, and then as we go down, it has less and less. I do high efficiency star. The main reason being is you get so many more shots. And from every review that I've seen online from people, they don't notice any difference. And I've noticed a big difference between lossless compression and high efficiency star in terms of not quality, but just the amount of photos I'm getting. And the reason for that is because lossless compression has more data, so therefore you get a lot less shots because the files are bigger, right? So with my 512 gigabyte CF Express Type B card, if I use high efficiency star, I think I get something like 13,000 shots with it. If I do lossless compression, it cuts it down huge. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly, but it's something like 6,000 or 8,000. Like you lose thousands of shots. And like I said, I don't notice any difference between lossless compression and high efficiency star. It's just if you're really being nitpicky, but like I said, every review I've watched and other videos I've watched, nobody seems to notice a difference. So my recommendation is high efficiency star. Save up that space and get more shots that are still good and fine. I don't notice a big difference. If you notice a difference, if you use it and you notice a difference, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Next is ISO sensitivity settings. I have mine set for 8,000. So this is if I turned auto ISO on, which I'll talk about later. If I turned auto ISO on, it's so that way it doesn't go above a certain number. And you can set it to whatever you're most comfortable with. You can just go full, like all the way. I think it's 256,000 or something like that. I like 8,000. That's my limit for me. I don't like my ISO going above that unless I set it for really particular situations. But if I have auto ISO on, I don't want it going above 8,000. That's my threshold. That's just me being picky. I wouldn't go with that. Go with what you're comfortable with. Play around with different ISOs, but that's where I like mine. Now we're going to scroll on down to metering. So I use matrix metering with a mirrorless camera, matrix metering 100% of the time. Main reason being is because when we're shooting with mirrorless, we can see everything. We can see if we're overexposed through our viewfinder. If you've never shot DSLR, that's what I used to shoot was DSLR, I would use spot metering if I was shooting something like a white bird, like a bald eagle with a white head, because spot metering will meter to whatever my focus point is on. So if I put my focus point on the bird's head, it would tell me if the head was blown out or not. But with matrix metering on a mirrorless camera, when I look through the viewfinder, I can tell if I'm going to blow out the eagle's white head or not. So matrix metering just exposes for the whole scene, versus something like spot that just does it for the particular point that you're hitting. But even if I'm going past birds going by, overcast sky, with matrix metering, I can tell. I can tell if I'm overexposed. So I just matrix metering 100%. All the way. Now we're going to go into our video recording menu, and the only reason I'm going to go over here and bring this up is to talk about my SD card and CF Express Type B card and why I put them the way I did earlier, and it's mainly because of this. So for my destination for video, I put video to my SD card slot. Remember before, for my primary card slot, it was the CF Express. For my photos, I put video on my SD. Photos for me are number one. I care about them the most. CF Express is very, very unlikely to fail. SD cards, more likely to fail. Video, I don't care as much about. I don't shoot it for professionally. If you're somebody like me who just likes it for social media clips or for making your own little videos or for YouTube, they don't matter as much to me. But the real reason that I do this is because when I'm out in the field, if you want to switch between photo and video, if you put your video on the SD card slot and your photo on the CF Express, there's no delay. You can do it instantly. Boom, switch, and there's no like slight delay. So if you're shooting photos and your photos and videos are all going to the CF Express, if you're shooting photos and you're, hammering down, you're shooting a whole bunch, and then you switch to video, there's going to be a major delay because the photos are still writing to the card, and you have to wait. There's a big delay. But if you put the video to SD, it switches to SD right away as you switch over, and it just starts the video. So it's super, super fast. I highly recommend it if you're somebody that shoots hybrid like I do. Now we're going to move down to our custom settings menu, and we're going to go into we're going to go into focus, and we're going to start with AFC priority selection. So to keep this simple, basically, if you do focus plus release or focus, as you're shooting, the camera will only take the photo when it believes it has locked focus. If you do release, when the camera is either focused or not focused, if you're pressing down on the shutter button, it's going to take the shot. It sounds like focus or focus plus release would be better because your camera is only capturing what's in focus. But you're giving full control to the camera, and what you deem in focus may not be what the camera deems in focus. I don't like giving too much control to the camera, and I don't like the camera telling me what's in focus versus what's not. Maybe you like it when it's on the wing or the body or somewhere else. Giving full control, the camera might like it on the wing or the body, and you might not. So I want to have the photo. When I press the shutter button, I want the camera to take the photo. I don't want the camera deciding that for me. So I highly recommend choosing release because you might miss out on shots that you didn't even know you wanted. I want them all. You're going to be deleting more photos, but I'd rather be deleting more photos than miss out on the one that I really, really wanted. Next, we're going to head on down to focus tracking with lock on. So this is just how sticky do you want your autofocus to be. One being very jumpy, not very sticky. If there's two birds next to each other, it's going to go from one bird to the other, like boom, 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 really, really quick. Versus 5 is going to be slow. It's going to be very sticky. It's going to stick to this bird. If this bird comes close by, maybe I'm not going to go to it. It's going to be a lot slower. So this is something I encourage you to play around with because there's going to be personal preference. There's going to be different times when you're shooting different birds. Like a bird in flight, you might want it to be more delayed because you don't want it latching on to a stick or a branch that's going by through the area. Or maybe you're shooting a whole bunch of birds all over the place and you want to be able to select a whole bunch of different ones really, really quickly, then you're going to want to go quick. So this will really depend on the situation. For me, I like to just keep it at 3. I keep it at 3. I don't really touch it. I haven't had any major issues. I have other ways of switching my autofocus that I'm going to teach you later on in this video. So I just keep it at 3. I'm sure I should play with it more. I would definitely encourage you to play with this. I need to even take that advice and play with it more myself. Next, we're going to scroll down to focus points used. The main thing you want to know with this is if you have your focus point up on your LCD, if you select all points, that means it's going to move across the screen a lot slower. So you got your little joystick. As you move it left and right and all over the place, it's going to hit every single point. So it's going to go really slow, but you're going to be able to pinpoint exactly where you want it. versus if you select alternating points, it's going to skip. It's going to go every other one. So it's going to move a lot faster across your screen. This is going to be personal preference. I like all points because I like to be exact. If I'm shooting a tiny bird and the eye is in a spot and I want to get really close to it or right on the eye, I want to be able to get right on the eye. I don't want to have alternating points where it's kind of skipping here and there, you know? So I prefer all points, but personal preference, play with them both. Next, we're going to go down to AF activation. For this is your back button focus, okay? So I highly, highly encourage, if you've never tried back button, give it a try. And what I'm talking about is on your camera, you have the basic shutter button. If you have shutter plus AF on, that means when you half press your shutter button, it's going to lock focus. And then when you full press, it takes the full shot. With AF on only, that button where your thumb rests naturally when you hold your camera, it says AF on. That will now turn to your focus button, and your shutter button will only take the photo. It will no longer focus. The main reason you would want this is because, let's say the bird is in a spot where you're having a really hard time locking focus. When you finally lock focus on it, press down on your AF on, get it, and release. Now your camera is on it, and now you can move your camera around and recompose the shot. And when you go to press the shutter, it's not going to refocus. It's also great for birds in flight. Bird is going across an area. Let's say it's going to go behind a tree. You can once you have it locked on, you can let off your thumb. It can go by the tree, because if you keep it on while it's going by the tree, you risk locking onto the tree. So it goes by the tree, and you're just, as it comes out the other side of the tree, you just keep on firing. You don't have to relock focus or risk it. So if you haven't tried back button focusing, I highly recommend it. Next, we're going to scroll on down to focus mode restrictions. And I like to select continuous autofocus. We want our autofocus systems to continually try and lock onto the bird because there's always so much movement. Now, this doesn't fully restrict manual focus. We can still use our focus ring, which is what we're going to be talking about very soon. And that's why I like this, because you still have the option of manual focus for when things get really difficult, but it locks us into what we want, which is continuous autofocus. And speaking of focus peaking, that's what we're going to talk about now. Focus peaking is when you're shooting with manual focus. So if we have that continuous autofocus locked, which is what we want, but every once in a while, we still want to shoot with manual focus. And if you use your focus ring on your camera, it will switch to manual focusing. But it's really hard to tell, even looking through the viewfinder, when you've locked focus when you're shooting manually. You're kind of judging it like, I think I got it, I'm not sure. Focus peaking really helps with that. So with focus peaking turned on, anything that's highlighting in red is showing you that that's what's in focus. And you can change the color. There's focus peaking color. I think there's red, white, blue. There's a whole bunch of different ones. There's also focus peaking sensitivity. I keep mine just at standard 2. I don't need it to be super fast or super slow. I find 2 is just a good middle ground. And then, yeah, here's all our colors: red, yellow, blue, white. I just keep mine at red. Keeps it really, really simple. For times where you want to use this, I have an example here with a photo of a mallard I shot in the snow. When there's like heavy snow, heavy rain, our autofocus systems really struggle because they got to shoot through all that snow and rain, right? So it's constantly fighting to try and find our subjects and trying not to lock on to all that snow and rain. So using focus peaking, we grab our focus ring, switching to manual focus. We have focus peaking on, so now we can see what's actually in focus. That's how I was able to get this photo of the mallard in the snow. I was using manual focus with focus peaking so I could tell that the mallard was in focus. So that's what we have in the custom settings menu. Now I'm just going to show you what I use just as an everyday walk around. This is what my camera is sitting at when I'm just going out to shoot and I'm just starting my day. I usually have a faster shutter speed around 1/1600. I shoot around f8 because that's just where my lens is sharpest, the 180-600 Nikon. And then I have auto ISO on because when you're first out starting the day, you know, birds, they know when we just show up and we're not prepared. So something usually crazy happens right when we show up. So I like to have auto ISO on just in case. And you can see right there what I talked about before, how my auto ISO is being locked at 8,000. It's not going to go any higher. And then my walk around settings for my focus point I walk around with wide L, so wide large. I just like that box. I think it works great. It's really easy. It's big enough to, you're using the joystick that when it gets near the bird, it's able to lock right on. And then speaking of bird, for autofocus subject detection, I use bird subject detect, which works amazing on the Z8. So there's my little box there, and that's my default. That's where I like to keep it, just for simple walk around. And then next is my release mode. So I shoot at the highest frame rate the Z8 will allow while still shooting raw. Because on paper it can shoot 120 frames a second, but those are all JPEGs. In continuous high, that's what's selected right now. There's continuous low. I shoot continuous high, so it's really fast with 20 frames a second. So that's very, very quick. That's more than enough. That's very, very quick. Yes, it's faster, but I don't want JPEGs. I want those raw files. So if that's what I recommend, especially with birds. We want to be shooting in fast bursts because there's so much action always happening. Birds are so small, they're so twitchy. All right, so this is the good stuff here. So this is the custom controls, and it is really, really cool what you can set up on the Z8. So for my FN1 button on my camera, where your fingers kind of rest naturally right in there as well. What I use for my FN1 button is I use autofocus area mode, and I do wide area AF C1. And the reason I do this is because this setting can allow you to make a single point of autofocus with bird eye detection. So I'll show you here. Here's WC1, okay? And now look, we can adjust how big or small we want that box. And I put it all the way down to 1 by 1, a little single point. But now we can also have bird detect on it, because default single point autofocus, you can't have bird eye. I always call it bird eye, but bird detection, bird subject detection. So, and the best part about it is this little dot doesn't have to be right on the bird. It just has to be close enough, which is so awesome. If my big, wide, large is having a difficult time picking up the bird, I switch to this, and 9 times out of 10, it fixes the problem. Now, I did just say 9 times out of 10, it works. There is that time for that 1 out of 10 time where the autofocus isn't working well with my wide large, my autofocus isn't working well with the WC1 single point. So for my FN2 button, I use just a basic single point of autofocus. So I go AF area mode, and I use single point AF. And the reason for that is because now I get a single point of autofocus with no subject detection. I have full control. The camera is no longer looking for the bird. It is now just a basic single point of autofocus for those moments where just autofocus isn't working. Panic, press it, we're good to go. Now wherever I put that square, that's what's going to be in focus. So I love it as just a last resort, little fail safe. Things aren't working out, panic, boom, we're good to go. And speaking of panicking, this is one of my favorites. So I have changed the DISP, or display button on the back of my camera to be an emergency bird takeoff or emergency bird in flight button. So what I do is I go to recall shooting functions, and I go to the hold one, so that way, it's weird, it's called recall shooting functions hold, but this is so I don't have to hold down on the button. This is so I can just press the button, and now my camera goes to immediately, as soon as you press it, into birds in flight action. Everything all set up. So you go in here, I go shooting mode, manual, shutter speed, 1/3200. The reason I do 1/3200 is because I find that's an excellent, safe ground for no matter what the bird is. It's very likely to get the bird sharp at 1/3200, no matter what it is, unless it's something like hummingbirds or a really small fast bird, but it's gonna do a good job in that emergency situation. Aperture, I do f8 again, just because I know with the lens that I shoot, that's just where I like to have it. It's my sharpest point. And I do exposure comp minus 0.7. The reason for this is because just in case the bird's flying near snow, overcast sky, the bird has white on it, and I don't want to blow it out. If I don't do exposure compensation here and it's an emergency and I press that button, I might blow out any of the whites and highlights in my scene if I don't do that. I don't go to extreme and do like -1, -2, and there's some situations where that's called for. I just find 0.7 in an emergency situation is a good even ground. I also make sure that my ISO sensitivity setting is set as well, so that way auto ISO is on and that it's not going over 8,000. And then for AF area mode, this is where I do 3D tracking. I don't love 3D tracking, but for birds in flight in an emergency situation, that's where I'm running to. 3D tracking I find can be a little finicky. It can really work well and latch right onto the bird, but if there's any kind of a distraction in the way, I find it can get, I like the branch more than the bird. But in an emergency situation, for specifically birds in flight, I want it. So that's what I have for that emergency bird in flight button. And that's it. That's my setup for bird photography with my Nikon Z8. If you want more bird photography tips, I have a bird photography settings cheat sheet ebook full of bird photography tips down there, link in the description below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.